So then the question came to me, do I believe in God? And I don't like that question. And people have complained at me a lot, and I'm sure they have their reasons because they don't like my answers, you know, and I have two answers. They've kind of become stock, which is not a good thing. But they're the best approximate. I can't figure out why I don't like the question exactly. I had three sort of burgeoning hypotheses. One was, it's none of your damn business. That's the first one. So it's like a privacy issue. Like it seemed to me to be a question that was too private to be answered properly. And so, and you know, you could consider that a cop-out, and maybe it is. And then another one was, well, what do you mean by believe? Like, do you mean the words? Do you mean to say the words, I believe in God? Does that indicate that you believe in God? Like, I don't know what you mean by believe exactly, because, and that's got me in trouble too, because, you know, people think that attempting to clarify the meaning of words is an attempt to escape from the question when it's actually an attempt to specify the question. I mean, is what you believe what you say or what you act out? Now, you know, I would say to some degree it's both, but if push comes to shove, as far as I'm concerned, what you believe is what you act out, not what you say. And then, you know, and if you're an integrated person, then what you act out and what you say are the same thing, and then you're a person whose word can be trusted, right? Because what you say and what you do are isomorphic. They're the same thing.
Stopping it there, and welcome to Make a Reacting Views. We're reacting view to things on the internet, same day, same shirt, different video. And today we're returning to Dr. Jordan Peterson, and he is talking about his belief in God. I think that a lot of people have been curious about this, and I think it's fair because he does a lot of lectures on the Bible, on Christianity, and the religion, of the history. He does lectures on other religions like Islam and stuff like that. And a lot of his talking points sometimes comes from the sort of the rules or the outlines or the guidelines of religious, the Bible, Christian church, or whatever, right? And so I think the question is fair whether Jordan Peterson believes in God. I also believe it's an act of tribalism. Jordan Peterson is a well-respected man, and everybody always wants to pull the people on their side, on their tribe, so they can sort of take ownership. Or, you know, this person who's very, very well respected believes in my ideology, believes in my God, believes in my principles, he's on my team, on my tribe. But I also can understand why people are frustrated with his answers because they're usually very like generalized. It's never like a yes or a no, which is fair. I think that's a really fair thing to not have a direct yes or no on something. FYI, I've already watched this video. I watched it weeks ago, and this video has been downloaded into my phone for weeks, and I haven't reacted to it yet because, I don't know, I guess I was a little bit timid because honestly, I disagree with what he's gonna say in this video, but more specifically, I disagree with the question that led to the rest of his statement, or I just disagree with the title of the video. Before you click off, because I know there's fanboys and fangirls of Jordan Peterson, I am one of them, but I also think it's important to always check in with yourself, because if you are just literally agreeing with every word someone says, you might be becoming a follower and not a critical thinker. I would hope that you watch the video so you can understand why I disagree with him. You may disagree with me, and that's totally fine. But anyway, we're gonna get right back into it. But before you do, if you like type of videos, please like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell to get notifications when I do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm, guys. And if you'd like to support the channel even further, you can donate. My PayPal and Cash App link is in the description box below and also in the comment section. Of course it helps, but you don't have to. You can just like, comment, and subscribe. Another great way to support this channel is either join my brand new membership program, different levels, different tiers, different perks, or you can visit my brand new merch shop. Links down below and links to all of the alternate platforms I'm on, my socials. Other ways to support me and other ways to contact me for business is always in the links down below. Other than that, sit back, relax, and continue to enjoy the video. All right, here we go.
But belief is instantiated in action. So I have also suggested that I act as if I believe in God, or to the best of my ability. And people aren't very happy with that either. And then the third is that I'm afraid that he might exist, which I think is the most comical of the three answers and perhaps the most accurate one. But then I was thinking about this today when I was thinking about what I might talk to you guys about, and I thought, well, let's go into this a little bit more. Let's say you do believe in God. say, I believe in God. It's like, okay, well, that's hypothetically pretty impressive, I would say. It's like you believe that there's a divine power that oversees everything, that is fundamentally ethical, that's watching everything you do, and you believe that. And so what effect does that have on your behavior if you believe it? Does that mean that you're, well, are you all in on your beliefs? Are you sacrificing everything to this transcendent entity that you proclaim belief in? Have you cleansed yourself of all your sin, let's say? Are you making all the sacrifices that you need to make? Like, have you taken the mote out of your eye? No. Or are you in the same situation, let's say, that the Catholic Church seems to be in right now? Just out of curiosity, it's a good time to bring that up, since the Pope seems to be concerned with what's been happening with the Catholic Church, given the endless pedophilic scandals, let's say, which seem rather serious in my estimation, and might have been something that was cleaned up perhaps 100 or 1,000 years ago. And it's being taken seriously perhaps now, and perhaps not, because it's not so easy to determine exactly what it would mean to take that seriously. And you might say, well, are all the people who are committing these heinous actions and then covering them up, if you ask them, well, do you believe in God? What are they going to say? Well, you'd think the answer would be yes, given that they're like priests, and yet, what's the evidence? Well, the evidence isn't exactly so clear.
Stopping it there. Okay, so I agree with him in some sense, but this is where I start to disagree with him. I thoroughly believe that Dr. Jordan Peterson is conflating the belief in God with the belief of a religion, with the belief of the Bible, and with the belief of the Christian church, which I'm really confused about, honestly, because I've heard him talk about other religions. He's done it recently on his channel, and to me, he very much respects other people's religious beliefs in a sense of what you believe in is what you believe in, and I'm not going to necessarily argue against that. I never saw Dr. Jordan Peterson as someone who was like, the Christian faith is the only way, and that's the only way you can have a relationship with God or believe in God, because I've seen him talk about this on other channels and other topics on other platforms, so it really kind of confused me how he sort of throughout this video kind of conflates God with religion, right? I agree with him when it says, like, if you are the head of a church, if you're putting yourself as the leader of a religion, then you are the example and you should lead by an example. Now, you failing in that leadership does not necessarily mean you don't believe in God. It just means you failed in that faith. You failed when it comes to the dogma of that religion. It doesn't mean you failed in believing in God. And I know, most likely, there are probably some Christians or very religious people who will agree with Dr. Jordan Peterson and say, well, no, he's right, because the only way is Jesus Christ, the only way is Christianity, the only way is the church, the only way is the Bible. And that's fine. I don't necessarily believe that. I believe you can have a relationship with God or belief in God regardless of your faith. God does not reside in the church. You can find God in the church, you can find communion in the church, you can find leadership in the church, you can find guidance in the church, you can find the word of the Bible in the church, but God doesn't live there. God is omnipotent. God is everywhere. So that's not really my belief, but I'm sure other people might disagree with me. And I also will say, believing in something or not, if you feel that God exists, and if God does exist, it doesn't matter if you believe in him, he still exists, or they still exist, or she's, whatever you want to call it, still exists, right? It's like saying that you don't believe in the binary of man and women. It doesn't matter if you don't believe in it, it still exists, right? Anyway, I don't want to make this video too long, so we're going to continue.
Well, the evidence isn't exactly so clear that the mere statement, let's say, or the mere acting out of the ritual, let's say, and I'm not trying to denigrate the statement or the ritual, but I'm pointing out that that's no indication of you're right to say that you believe, because you got, and I think this is why it's bothered me to answer this question. It's like, well, what right do I have to say that, to make that claim? I believe in God. Well, what's the claim? Is that the claim that I'm a good person somehow? Because you'd think that if you believed in God, actually, like seriously, that you'd be a good person, like right now, because Well, well, for obvious reasons, I would think. And so if that hasn't happened in some sort of miraculous sense, so that you're the best person you could possibly imagine being on an ongoing basis, and then terrified of deviating from that path in a serious manner, then I don't see why you have the right to say that you believe in God.
So again, this is where I very much disagree with him. I think everyone has the right to say they believe in God. Now, he might just be saying, and sort of like just his personal belief, or morally you don't have a right. But hopefully he's not saying you should censor yourself and should not have a right to say you believe in God, because anyone should have a right to say they believe in God. Like I'm going to say I believe in God and have every right to do so. And again, I still think he's very much conflating Christianity, religion, the Bible with God. He even said himself, like, well, does it mean that you are a good person? First of all, what makes someone good? What is a good person? Are you just going by the 10 Commandments? Someone can completely follow the 10 Commandments and still be a shitty person. So what do you mean by good person? He then follows that up with saying, well, unless that happened miraculously. So he's even admitting himself that it would have to be miraculous. It would have to be a miracle if you were just this completely good person. And so unless this person falls into a miracle or miraculously becomes this perfect human being, then they're not able or allowed to say they believe in God. I'm very confused by that. And he even said earlier that, are you sacrificing everything to this deity or whatever, to God? In the Bible itself, if you're going to go by the theology of Christianity, it doesn't say sacrifice everything. It says sacrifice the 10th happily or whatever, right? But you are supposed to dedicate yourself to God, or dedicate yourself to getting people to convert to Christianity and, you know, accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. And it also, I don't know if it says in the Bible, but definitely my church has taught this, of like you're supposed to come to God as you are. That means as dirty rags, as sinful, as broken as you possibly can be, you're supposed to come to God as you are. You're not supposed to become perfect and then come to God. Now, once you've given yourself to Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, blah, 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 then the church will encourage you to try to be the best Christian as you possibly can be, and discourage you from being a lukewarm Christian or a fence-sitter, because that lukewarm Christianity is even worse than being a heretic or whatever, right? Because you know the word and you still do the bad things, something like that. But initially coming to God, you're supposed to come as you are. And I have heard other people who are more versed on the Bible, like really read it through and through, have kind of criticized Dr. Peterson of speaking on Christianity when he's not a Christian. He doesn't actually understand the theology of Christianity or the Bible. I don't know if I agree with that. I know Dr. Peterson have done a lot of lectures on Christianity and the Bible, but even throughout this video, I've heard him say things that I'm like, that's not really what Christianity even teaches if you're going to go by that. However, I still think he's conflating Christianity with spirituality or a relationship with God or a belief in God. But anyway, let's continue.
You know, one of the things Nietzsche said about Christianity, he was a great critic of Christianity, although also a great friend in a very peculiar way, in that sometimes your best friend is the one who points out your weakest properties, let's say. He said, as far as he was concerned, there was only one Christian, and he died on the cross. And that's a, you know, perhaps an extreme statement, but one worth giving some consideration to. It's like, well, then you look at what are you called upon? Let's say if you're going to proclaim yourself as a believer, you know. And I thought about this a lot as I've gone through the Old Testament. I did a bunch of lectures last year, and so what are you called upon? Well, you're called upon initially to act out the spark of divinity that's within you by confronting potential with the logos that's within you, which means to take the opportunities that are in front of you, the potential future, and to transform it into the present in the best possible way, using truth and courage and careful articulation as your guide. So that's the first thing you're called on to do.
I totally agree with him that that's a really good guideline to live your life by, but that's not Christianity necessarily or the Bible. And again, I've heard other people criticize him about this. Again, I'm not a Christian no longer. I'm no longer religious. I don't go to the church, but I was very heavily involved in the church. I was a leader and everything like that. And I believe again, what Christianity teaches you is to dedicate yourself to the Lord and God and Savior, and to dedicate yourself into trying to convert as many people to Christ, because that's the loving thing to do for your brothers and sisters on this planet, right, on earth, right? So that's a good guideline, and I agree with him totally, but again, he's conflating, again, Christianity with God. However, I feel like he's also not necessarily getting the Christianity part right. That's just my opinion. Completely correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. Maybe he means by, and I know in church they say like, God gives you gifts, so you take those gifts that you have and you focus on those gifts, but you use those gifts to turn people to Christ, basically. If you're a musician, you make music to turn people to Christ. If you are a painter, you make art to turn people towards Christ. Like, everything is to turn people towards Christ. Not to necessarily, like, I don't know, be the best version you can be of yourself, but be the best Christian to your church and to get people to turn to Christ. Kind of like that. Anyway, let's continue.
As your guide. So that's the first thing you're called on to do. That's a major deal there. That's a tough one. And then the second is to make the proper sacrifices. That's the Cain and Abel story. Is like, you want something, you genuinely want it, you want to set the world straight, then you let go of what's necessary and you pursue. You let go of what isn't necessary, no matter what it is, and then you pursue what's necessary.
Again, I believe like the church, with the Cain and Abel, I can see where you say like metaphorically that means you should sacrifice pleasure and leisure time and friends and opportunity for the greater good of your life or your community or society or the world or whatever. For the most part, the church doesn't really preach it that way. It's more like sacrifice the 10th of whatever you have. Like, again, Cain and Abel, they sacrificed their animals and the food they grown, because that's what's their currency at the time. But in the church, they very much preach like sacrifice your 10th of your currency, of your earnings, as a good faith that God will return it in blessings or whatever, right? However, I don't think everyone is called to save the world. I don't think that's everyone's calling, is to sacrifice everything so you can save the world for the good of the planet. Some people are just called to be plumbers and carpenters and mothers and dog walkers or whatever, and you take that and you do the best you can. But I don't think everyone's called to save the planet, and if you're not doing that, you shouldn't be able to call yourself a believer in God or whatever. I don't think everyone's meant to be Christ warrior. You know what I mean? Like, some people are just meant to be here and just sort of neutrally live through life, you know, in the best way they possibly can. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I don't think that person should not then be allowed to not say they believe in God if they're not constantly fighting the good fight all the time. You know what I mean? And earlier he said that someone kind of mentioned that the only Christian that they ever know was Jesus Christ. And in some ways I agree with him, because Jesus Christ is supposedly perfect, even though we're missing like 30 years of his life. But again, that's kind of to say like, well, if you can't be perfect like Jesus, then you can't be a Christian, don't come to church, and you can't believe in God. I think that's a terrible message to spew out to people. If he wants to take that on personally, that's fine. If you want to have such a high standard for yourself, which for me is sad if he's letting this standard stop him from having a true personal intimate relationship with God, because he thinks, well, I'm not worthy yet, so let me make sure I get to these higher standards. I actually feel sad for him if that is what he's doing. I mean, he might just be explaining himself away right now on his platform, but maybe that's not what he does in his personal life when he's alone, whatever, right? But anyway, let's continue.
What you try to do when you raise children is that you try to do everything you can to impress upon them by imitation and by instruction and by love and by encouragement that they are crucial beings in the world whose ethical decisions play an important role in shaping the structure of reality itself, and that they have the moral responsibility to do that. And you get your ark in order, that's your family, let's say, so that when the storms come, you can stay above water for the 40 days of flooding, and you're capable of leading your people through the desert when the desert makes itself manifest, and you can escape from tyranny properly because you're wise enough to see it, and you take the full burden of being on yourself, all the suffering that's part and parcel of that. You accept that voluntarily, let's say, And you do everything you can to confront the malevolence that's part of you and that's part of the state and that's part of the world. And you make a garden around you. That's the paradise, a walled garden. It's a walled, well-watered place, so the forces of nature and society exist together in harmony, and you place your family in that so that they can live properly. And you treat your enemy as if he's yourself, and the same with your brother. And, well, then you can say, then maybe you can say, maybe then you have the right to say that you believe in God. Otherwise, maybe you should think twice about it.
Yeah, no, I just totally disagree. I 100% totally disagree with the last part of that. I agree with everything else you said before that for the most part. That sounds like a great guideline to life. Like, you try to be the best, role model for your children so they can emulate a good behavior and good morals and good values and good principles, so they can be the author of their own life and construct their life the best way possible, so they'll be good influences on their own children, their family, their community, their society, their structure, or whatever, right? You build up enough stoicism so you can survive when it's hard, right? You have enough wisdom and knowledge to stock up and to prepare for the times that it's hard, right? You're able to be a leader and lead your family and lead your community through harsh times, the whole walking through the desert. However, that's not everybody's calling. Not everyone can be Moses. Not everyone can be Noah. And not everyone is called to be Moses. And not everyone is called to be Noah. Some people were called to follow Moses. And some people were called to follow Noah. So I don't think that's everyone's path and journey. And just because that is not your arc in life does not mean you shouldn't be able to say, I believe in God, because you're not some freaking Christian superhero. I just think that's a bad message, to be completely honest. Again, if that is your personal standard, that's fine. But I think that a lot of times, and a lot of things that I've heard from people who don't go to church or turned away from Christianity or even turned away from God, a lot of this is wrapped up into that. It's, also sort of negative experiences in church and with people who call themselves Christians, is this idea that you have to be perfect. You have to be this sort of God warrior, constantly stomping on the devil's head or whatever, and pressuring that sort of ideology and that feeling on 5-year-olds. I've seen these, like, pushing on 3-year-olds, talking about, you are God's warrior, you have to save the planet, every single second of your life, you have to be trying to save souls. Like, instead of just letting kids be kids, as much as I don't like the rainbow grooming, I don't like the church grooming of that either. You know what I mean? So I don't think that's everyone's journey. And to say that if that is not your journey, that's not what you're doing, then you don't have a right to say you believe in God, I think is completely and utterly the wrong message. However, again, if that is his personal high standard that he placed on himself, that is fine. I still feel awful if that is him hindering himself in having a relationship with God. Because I feel like he's seeing God as a guideline and rules and sort of this benevolent sort of thing in the air that will strike you down and punish you if you don't follow the rules. It's a vengeful, hateful, angry God. Instead of like a God that you can have a relationship with. I think he sees it more as like a book, like instructions, like this is how to be a God believer, and not like, let me cultivate a relationship with God, let me sit in silence, let me pray, let me meditate, let me feel God, or whatever you want to call it, right? And to me, that's not a relationship with God. That is just you being a Christian soldier, which is fine if that's what you want to do, but I don't know, I just see it completely different. Again, if the title of this video was, do I believe in Christianity? Do I believe in Christian faith? Do I believe in the Bible? Do I follow all the dogma and all the commandments? Which even in this talk, he's sort of a little bit, he's not explaining it the way churches explain it. He's using a lot of what the Bible has said and sort of using it in metaphors as a good guideline to be a good person in life. But that's not even how the Christian church explains the theology of Christianity or the Bible. Anywho, I know Dr. Peterson's a fucking genius, so maybe I'm completely wrong, but that's just how I feel about it. And again, I know a lot of religious people who are very, very, very dogmatic in their Christian faith and their religion are going to disagree with me. It's totally fine. But anyway, let's continue.
Because You know, there's a line in the New Testament that Christ himself says. Two of them, I should read them too, because they're very relevant to this. I guess I could paraphrase them. A rich man comes up to Christ and says, good leader, good Lord. And he asks him a question about how it is that he should be a good person. And Christ says, don't call me good. There's no one that's good but God. And, you know, that's worth thinking about. I mean, the one person
What's the point?
that in principle, in our ancient stories, had the right to make some direct connection between himself and the divine, was unwilling to do it when challenged. And so it might be reasonable to assume that each of us could be much more cautious about making that sort of statement bluntly when we're asked. And then the other line is...
but even in that statement, the question wasn't, Jesus, do you believe in God? It was, Jesus, how to be good. So it's still not the same question. I can understand that question of like, I don't know how to be good. You know what I mean? I'm just a flawed human being. That's not the question of, do I believe in God? He said earlier, like, the statement of, do I believe in God mean you're a good person? Absolutely not. Believing in something doesn't make you a good person, and I don't feel like anybody's ever sort of made that comparison of, if you believe in God, that means you are perfect. I've never heard anybody make that comparison. But again, if you're conflating the belief in God with being a good Christian, that makes sense. If someone says, I'm a good Christian, then of course you have to pass all these purity tests, right? But saying I believe in God is not the same as saying I am good. You know what I mean? Because again, even if you don't believe in it, and if God exists, it doesn't really matter what you believe. Anyway, let's continue.
The other line is, not all those who say, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Got that about right? Which means something approximating, just because you make a claim to moral virtue, let's say, your belief in God, which I can't see how you can make a higher claim to moral virtue than that. You know, I mean, agnostic, atheistic, I don't really care.
I don't understand how having a belief is a claim of moral virtue. It's like saying, like, I believe that all children should live in a loving home. Does that mean that you go out and you make sure every single child on this planet is in a loving home? No. That's just something that you believe in. And then in your personal life, if you have children or the children around you, you try to take care of. But you don't go out and make sure every single person. It's like saying, like, I believe that world peace should happen. Do you physically go out and try to actually ignite world peace? No, you just try to be the best person you can in your personal life. Or if you say that I don't think sexual assault should happen, does that mean you go out and stop every single? No, like, I don't understand how saying I believe in something is a moral, saying that I'm the most highest moral person on the planet. I don't understand how he's conflating that. I feel like, again, if you're saying that I'm a best Christian, then that's one thing. Or if you're calling yourself the Pope, or if you're saying that you're a pastor, or something like that, where you're saying you're a leader of a dogmatic faith, then yeah, I can understand that then. But I don't really understand how he's conflating and saying, if you say you believe in this and you're not a perfect person, then how dare you? I don't get it. Like, I'm so confused by this video, and I've never been as confused by Peterson in my life, and I was actually kind of surprised by this video. And if you even go in the comment section, a lot of people are saying that, yeah, there was a lot of insight, I'm really happy the way you explain this. However, I think you're kind of missing the point a little bit. Again, if he would have titled it, Do I Believe in the Bible and the Christian Faith and Everything It Stands For?, it would have all made sense, but he titled it, and he keeps sort of saying the belief in God is where he's getting this from, and I really don't understand how he's pulling that or conflating that. Again, if that's his personal standards, then I understand, but he is a leader of some sort, and people look up to him, and so I honestly think this is like a kind of a negative sort of way of saying that you are not allowed to believe in God until you are perfect, which he even said in the beginning of this video, which is a miraculous thing to do, almost impossible. So the most people on this planet can have the belief in God. It's just very confusing to me. Anyway, let's continue.
You know, I mean, agnostic, atheistic, I don't really care. The point is something like this. Imagine something of ultimate transcendent value. I don't care whether you believe in it or not, but imagine that something like that exists. And then you swear allegiance to it, which is to say, I believe in this. I mean, there's a heavy moral burden that comes along with that, just to allow yourself to utter the words without feeling that you should be immediately struck down appropriately by lightning. And so I think that's why that question makes me uncomfortable.
I think the question makes him uncomfortable because of his own high standards for himself, which is fine, but I also think it makes him feel uncomfortable because he's conflating the belief in God with Christianity, church, and the Bible, which is also kind of like doing his own sort of metaphors to the guidelines to really being a good person in life and society. Anyway, guys, that's my thoughts. I don't know if you made it to the end of the video, but if you did, please leave a comment. I'm going to end it here because this video is already too long. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to get the notifications when I do upload, and you guys have an amazing day. Bye!